I would be one voice. I would be a very small voice, but I'd be a very clear voice. There should be 3 restrictions or 3 conditions on campaign finance. Number 1, you can only accept as a candidate money from somebody who is registered to vote in the district in which you're running, so that you don't have a circumstance where a Goldman Sachs executive from Greenwich, Connecticut is making a $1,000 contribution to the congressman in the 9th Congressional District in Massachusetts. What interest does he have in the congressman in the 9th Congressional District, except that the congressman in the 9th Congressional District of Massachusetts sits on House Banking and Financial Services? So the first provision of that law is you can't accept money from anybody who's not registered to vote in the election you're in. The second restriction would be, we'll establish some value that pretty much anybody with enough sacrifice would be able to afford. 25 bucks, 50 bucks, something that makes it so that the person who has $2,300 of himself, $2,300 from his wife, $2,300 from each one of his children can contribute limitless amounts of money. And a person like me, you know, I generally can afford about $200 to make a contribution. Other people maybe only $50 or $25. So we should establish, I think $50 is a reasonable amount, which is the limit. That's it. So you have to be registered in the district to make the contribution, and it's limited to $50. And the third provision would be that that there is a cap on the amount that can be spent. Say $1 per registered voter in whatever the district is. And that's it. You can't spend any more than that, no matter how much you raise. If you do this, it means that the congressman, the representative, is going to be beholden only to the people, to his constituents, to the people in his district. And this conflict of, you know, well, I got to get reelected, I got to go out and spend most of my time raising money so that even though I don't have any opposition, I'm still going to have $1.2 million. And the next cycle, what is it, Markey is sitting there with 3.4 million. You know, the amount that's being spent is obscene. It's clear that only the privileged and those with significant resources are the ones that are calling the tune here, and that's got to change. So that is a priority of mine, and that would be a bill that would be introduced immediately.
No,
I'm a single-payer universal supporter. I think I would have voted for the bill, but it's a lousy bill. I think that Medicare for all is clearly the most rational. Here's what I don't get. You have, and we have so many huge problems in this country. The first thing you do is to say, well, other countries have the same problem, the same challenge that we face. How do they do it? And how are they performing? So you look and you say, well, we're number 36 in the world, despite what the sort of, you know, the typical political, we have the best medical system in the world and so on, which is just baloney. And again, this is misinformation that is put out there to sort of, for the benefit of the politicians that are there, because obviously if we weren't the best in the world, they would be upset with that situation, and it would be their responsibility because most of them have been there forever. So they're responsible for it. So in any case, we're 36th in the world, behind Slovenia in terms of dollars spent and performance, quality of the various measures of performance in the medical care. So you say, okay, what's number one? Who's doing the best job? How are they doing it? Let's copy that, do it in a way that fits our system as well as possible, and move on to the big problems that other people haven't solved either, that we really need to solve, like climate change, for example, and things that are really going to threaten you and your children. But we don't do that. We have to reinvent the wheel, but in such a way that we make sure we take care of health insurance company executives and stockholders, because they take precedence in the situation. When I get involved in health insurance or health care discussions out on the platforms and so forth, and when I run across the government getting out of hand, I say, well, tell me, what in your view, what does the private insurance company bring to the transaction? The hospitals bring facilities. All kinds of other companies bring medical equipment that they design and build and so forth. The doctors bring years of study and experience and so forth. There are a lot of different players and resources that are brought to bear on taking care of our health. What do the insurance companies contribute to this process? And they think for a minute, and they can't think for the life of them, because they've all had the same experiences that we have, where the insurance company misplaced the form and you'll have to resubmit the form again because they can't find it, when in fact they just threw it away because they want to hold on to that money for another 30 days. And anyway, they declined it because you don't apply, but you do. You are eligible and you prove it to them, but that took another 30 days. And on and on and on. The fight with the insurance companies to get what you're entitled to. Everybody's gone through that. But for some reason, they assume that that's all necessary experience. We have to endure that kind of pain and suffering. But there's no reason for that. Everybody that's on Medicare is pretty happy with Medicare, and they all say that, right? Even the ones that say we want the government out of health care, and you ask them, well, how old are you? I'm 67 years old. Well, Medicare is oh, don't do anything with Medicare. It's how people are being programmed. And these guys are very good. But here's the problem. And this is, again, why I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm an independent. Because within a month of the inauguration, when it was clear that health care was going to be an issue, Nancy Pelosi says, well, single-payer universal is off the table. Huh? Why? Because she decided it was off the table. Why? Because she didn't think that politically they could get it done, or because there's so much money that is coming from all of these, medical insurance interests in contributions and so on? I don't know. But it was not part of the discussion.
But isn't that where the president should have stepped
Absolutely.
up and brought the
Absolutely.
people into the discussion and
Absolutely.
made the case that this is what we need?
No question about it. And how obscene. A 2,400-page piece of legislation that accomplishes really very little in the end.
Congressman Lynch did not vote for it.
I agree.
And he said it was lousy.
Yeah,
Like you said.
okay.
But you said you would.
I would have voted for it because it did make some improvements that were absolutely necessary. But let's not give the incumbent a pass on this. Any of you that have covered him or this issue or whatever for any period of time, if you go back to August 2008 at Curry College, when he had his one town hall meeting, he didn't support the bill at that time because he didn't think that we could afford the public option. That was his reason. He was against the public option. And 6 months later, he's voting against it, or 9 months later, whatever it was, he's voting against it because it didn't have a public option. He wasn't voting for that bill no matter what. It just happened to be that he needed to use that rhetoric because he had angered the unions, which are his bedrock support, so much that he had to give them some kind of story that he was really looking out after their interests. That's why he didn't vote for it.
So what do you think his real motivation was?
Well, I think his real motivation is that, you know, he put his finger in the wind and saw Scott Brown and what was going on and decided that, you know, I'm not going to move on if I support. That's all. If you take the jobs away, you don't have to deport anybody. They'll find their way back home. You know, one of the things that is terribly important, and I think this is again a Tea Party, you know, concept that I think is valid and should be listened to, and that is there are laws, and we better start respecting the laws across the board. Caucusing with the Democrats.
So you would be in
But I
favor
don't
of,
consider myself a Democrat because I still see both parties at this point as part of the same problem. And I think that, I mean, look at the 9th Congressional District. 48% of the registered voters in the 9th District are independents. 41% of Democrats, 11% of Republicans. And one thing we're finding is that it's not just a, as it used to be, well, I'm unenrolled. You know, it depends on the person and this and that. This time, when they ask, when we hand out the literature and we talk to them and they say, well, are you Republican or Democrat? Independent. Oh, I'm an independent too. Now there's an identity with that. They are very clear that they're not, they don't want to accept responsibility for either party. They're sick and tired of the inability of the two political parties to do a reasonable, competent job, you know, respecting their interests.